We are talking about recording these title records and the deed on public record with the recorder's office at the county recorder's office. And recording, let me just first start by saying the reason that we record things publicly is really, for the start of it, is security and safety and a way to prevent fraud. If we've got it on public record, then we know for sure who owns it. And back in the day before we had recording, there used to be something known as curbstoners. This is even before real estate laws were in place that you had to have a real estate license. And they sometimes would come into a community as land was being developed, and they would sell the same lot over and over and over, take the money, leave town, and then all of a sudden, maybe 20 people were left to think that they owned the same plot of land. Okay, it was chaos. So when we record things, it's really so that the world knows who owns that property. And then, of course, it also facilitates so that a bank can put on public record when they put a lien against the property as a way to secure repayment of that debt. So it's got a couple of different functions. Now, when we have title pass, it doesn't mean that title didn't pass from one owner to a new owner just because it's not recorded. Title can still pass, but again, we record it so that the world knows who really owns it. And then again, if there's a mortgage, we can let the lender record that mortgage lien against it. Not all documents are recorded. Typically, property taxes and special assessments are not until they're delinquent. Another document that's not recorded is a lease. Okay, it's the deed when property transfers title from one owner to a new owner. Priority, I think, will be something good for you to know for the exam as well. Priority refers to the order in which the liens are recorded against the property. So we put on record the deed that I'm now the new owner of 123 Banana Street. And I got a mortgage to buy the property. So my lender, Chase Bank, for example, put a lien against the property. That's, again, their security for me to repay their debt. Now, let's talk about how the priority works, though, if there's several of those liens filed. Usually the priority goes first come, first serve. So whoever recorded first is the priority. But there is one big exception, and that is property taxes and special assessments. Those always come first, no matter when they were recorded, they jump to the front, okay? That'll be good information for you to know. Now, a title search. What will happen when we get a offer under contract? The buyer's attorney or title company will do a title search against the property to look for any of these lien defects, mechanics liens, utility liens, mortgage liens, anything that would need to be settled and corrected before we transfer property from one owner to a new owner and maybe leave them with a burden that they didn't know existed, okay? And one thing that Iowa does that's a little unique is we not only search public record, we use a document called an abstract. And an abstract is usually a legal size document that I call the autobiography of the parcel of real estate. And it's going to go back in time with all of the people that have owned that property and any liens that they've created that have been resolved. And then they look to make sure that there's a clear chain of title. So John Smith owned it, then Amy Schaefer owned it, then Marcy Peters owned it. And we want to make sure that there's a very, very clean chain of title. If there's any breaks in dates and owners, and we don't know for sure who owned it on that date, that's a title issue, and we need to resolve who actually owned it on that date, okay? And we use the abstract to do that. Now, Iowa is very, very unique. Not every state uses these abstracts. Most do not. I believe Oklahoma is one of the last remaining states with us that use an abstract in some capacity. We actually use it every time a property is sold or changes to a new owner, and we update that abstract with the last owner's information. Okay. So when you list a property, this is for your career, you're going to want to ask your owners of those properties where the abstract is located. They may have it in their house, they may have it in a safe or a bank security deposit, or it still could be with an abstract company from when they purchased. We need to know where that's at because when we transfer it to a new owner, it needs to be reviewed. So here is my number one tip for working with those abstracts. They are worth about $1,500 to $1,800 to replace if they're lost. Okay, so here's the key. Do not ever give it or take it to anyone. Don't pass it off to another party or take it from someone without a receipt. You want to document where that's at so that if it goes missing, you can prove that you passed it off to someone else and don't have it anymore, right? Or if you can't prove that, you're going to be the end up being the one that pays the $1,800 to have it replaced. Okay, so that's just for your career. Here's an example of what the front of an abstract of title might look like. It's usually going to have an abstract number. It'll say abstract in some fashion. It will maybe have the abstract company like American Abstract or Iowa Title, and then it will have the legal address. Okay. The last thing I want to point out is title insurance. And I mentioned this, I believe, in the last video. Title insurance is insurance put on the property so that if a title defect arises in the future with the new owner, they've got a policy in place to cover that expense instead of having to pay it out of pocket, right? Because you'd lose equity in your house very, very quickly. Iowa typically does a standard policy with Iowa Title Guarantee that is just for the value of the property. Other states sometimes insure it for the value of the property and beyond to cover any of these mistakes, because again, they don't ever review this abstract of title to double check what's on public record versus what's documented. So again, I would know that definition of title insurance. I think that could be helpful for you to navigate through the exam and your career.